Am I the a-hole for refusing to babysit the golden child's baby after he disowned me for being adopted? Plus updates. Original post. I, 20 female, was adopted when I was 16 by my half-brother and his wife, who were in their late 30s at a time. They already had 6 children when they adopted me, but it was never an issue. They have treated me like their own kids since they met me, and later adopted me. So did all their other kids. Except for one, their golden child who is only 4 months older than me, who we will call Chad. Chad has always been an insensitive a-hole to literally everyone, including our other siblings. He would literally fist fight our older sister, say horrible and mean things to everyone, and get away with it. He also had extreme anger issues that would cause broken doors, holes in walls, etc. He also got to do everything me and my sister were never able to do. Got a free car, go out at night, etc. When we were still in school together during high school, he got up in front of our whole class year and told everyone I wasn't his sister, and never would be. He then told me in front of his friends that I would never be a part of his family, and I should just get over it, and walked off. This was not a one-and-done thing. He would keep doing this up until he moved out and I stopped seeing/talking to him. Golden Boy once again got a limelight of the family after he got married right after high school, moved out to his wife's family's house, and then had a baby, the first grandbaby. Since this has happened, I have stayed as far away from him as possible, only seeing him for family pictures every year because our mother asks. Recently, I decided to come forward to our mom about what he said and did because she was upset about how I was distancing myself from him. She basically pulled the "that's still my kid and it's my first grandbaby" card as the reason she wasn't going to be upset over it. I didn't really care, to be honest. I knew it wasn't going to change her mind on her kid anyway. Then, out of nowhere, I got a message begging me to come to babysit for them because you're the only one who can deal with these kinds of babies because no one will help. Apparently, they're weaning their kid off of breastfeeding, and the baby is extremely clingy because of that. And the fact that mom is a germphobia who has basically isolated this kid since birth, it literal has only been held by like 6 people since it's been born. They know I don't sleep for the most part because I'm an insomniac with ADHD, and I also am not bothered by crying. For some reason, I can sit for hours with a baby crying and it doesn't bother me. Can't tell if that's a blessing or a curse at this point. My sister is mad at me because apparently they haven't asked anyone else in the family for help but me, and everyone wants to go see this baby. Am I the a-hole for not wanting to be around or take care of the baby because his father said I'm not a part of his family? Now for the top comments before reading the update. Not the a-hole. I will send them your hourly rates you will charge for the work. When Chad tries to pull the family card, say clearly that he has always publicly announced that you are not his sister and never will be. So you are only keeping Chad's word. Oh, please do this. This is so perfectly petty. OP should make sure to remind him of every single time he wronged her. Make him really think about his actions. The entitlement he has is insane, and the fact that everyone seems fine with it boggles my mind. Not the a-hole at all. Stand your ground. You do not owe Chad anything. He took action. Now he has to face the consequences. Just keep repeating, he said that I was not a part of his family and never would be. Therefore, I owe him nothing. This is not open for discussion. My decision is final. If you decide to go, make an absurd rate of $100 per hour paid up front. I say this gently, but your adopted parents aren't as great as you think they are. Treating your children differently, showering gifts and praise on 1 out of 7 kids and allowing one to be an a-hole to the rest is horrible. And I'm sorry they knew way before you sat your mom down and told her. She has always known and looked the other way. Now for the first update. I want to say this. I read everyone's comments and it made me feel much better knowing my feelings on this whole situation are valid. I wanted to give an update that most of you may not like. After I posted, I ended up talking to 2 of my friends from high school. They were actually there during multiple occasions when Chad publicly said all that stuff. I talked with them for a little while, and one of these friends actually came over almost weekly when I was still living at my parents' home, so she firsthand understands my family. We talked, and we all mutually agreed that I go this once and see if I can mend things. If not, I can tell my mom and sister I tried, and we are done with the whole thing. And if the whole negative thing with my family keeps up, I will cut them off for good. So I accepted to go babysit. I went over to Chad's house around 8 p.m. As soon as I showed up, I was greeted by Chad's wife, who was extremely happy to see me. She was tired. You could just tell she had the "I have a 1-year-old" face going on. She talked to me for a few minutes about how happy she was I came over, and how she was glad to be going out with Chad. I kinda just listened to her go on and on before she finally got to the baby. Let's call him Seth. She explained to me his night routine, feeding, etc. Nothing too big. Then she got to the end where she started going on about how he was having crying fits at night and how he wouldn't get to sleep until mid-morning. I was a little meh on that, but all babies have different routines, I guess. She then said they would only be gone for about 4 hours and that they would be home around like 12:30, 1 at the most. After this, Chad shows up from their room, literally starts talking to his wife, looks at me and then just kind of looks me over for a minute and gives me a small wave and nod before heading out of the house. His wife follows and simply tells me to call her text if I need anything. For a minute, I was just stunned, but went to work to see Seth. Which was odd, because it was my first time seeing him in person and not in the photos that are hung around our parents' house. In person, he is the cutest little baby ever. He was fine the whole time, and he only cried because there was no one in the room, not because of the weaning. By this time, it was around 11:30, almost 12. I would check the clock every few minutes just to see what time it was. 12:30 rolled around, and I'm like, should I text them? And I'm like, no, let me give them another few minutes until I need to text them. I ended up texting both of them at 1, asking where they were because they did say they would be home by now. I got no reply from either of them. They finally show up at 3 in the morning. I'm livid at this point. Not even over having to take care of Seth for a longer period of time, but just because they never texted me back. Like, what if there was emergency or something? They walk into the living room and I'm just like, I texted asking where y'all were and no one answered. And Chad's wife starts saying, oh, Chad said it was fine and that it would only be an hour more. And I was like, you know what? It's fine. Whatever. Seth is sleeping. She looks at me all weird and I rolled my eyes, say, it's not the weaning that makes him cry at night. He gets lonely. He's clingy. Just let him know you are in the room when he starts crying and he will go right back to sleep. I started to walk out with my stuff. As I was right about to walk completely past Chad, I turned around and was like, so you aren't going to say anything to me? After I looked after your kid for like 7 hours now? He snorted at me and was like, no, my wife is the one who talked to me into this anyway. Mad at this point, I said, so this wasn't, I don't know, possibly a way to be able to apologize for high school? Or maybe all those other times you decide to outcast me from the family? Because I was under the impression that maybe you want to patch things up because of you asking me of all people to watch your kid. He sat there for a minute and just said, what should I apologize? Because literally nothing from high school has changed. Man, you really do need to just grow up and understand that me and my wife aren't going to cater to you like mom and dad did. Because you're adopted. You ain't our family and you won't ever be. At this point, I just got in my car and left. I ended up texting my mom about all of it, thinking she would get it in the morning when she woke up. No, of course she had to be awake. She apparently told Chad's wife about the conversation we had about all the stuff Chad had said and done to me in school. Apparently, his wife felt bad because she had an adopted sister too, and felt horrible that Chad had done and said all those things. Apparently, mom didn't know about Chad asking about the babysitting thing until now, and she started talking to the wife who is now upset. Apparently, she thought Chad would have changed since then and didn't think he will act the way he did when I left. I told my mom that I'm done with him and that if something ever happened with Seth, then I would be there, but I was done with them until that happens. Way things are going, I will most likely be cutting my whole family off because this isn't worth the stress anymore. You handled this great. You can defend your actions to your family and they can get off your back about Chad. So glad you don't need to cut off your family. I'm hoping I won't have to. I mostly say this because I truly do love just about all my other siblings. And I don't want to have to pick and choose who to stay in contact with because of Chad, my mom and my sister. I feel bad for Chad's wife. She sounds like she would be grateful for the family support, but Chad is gatekeeping for control. Maybe reach out to her and ignore Chad. Also, what does your brother think of his son? Honestly, she is extremely quiet for the most part and tries to stay away from any kind of contact or drama. I feel bad for her for being stuck in this whole thing, but sadly, I don't think I will talk to her again. The longest conversation we have ever had together was literally during this whole thing. As for my half-brother, he stopped pushing me into doing anything with Chad or related to Chad once I turned 20 and moved out. He told me I could do what I want. I know he's not happy with Chad, but I know he's not going to actually act and do anything about it. He more so acknowledges what Chad has done, holds him accountable, but doesn't make a move to say or do anything. He's doing a better job than my mom though, because he at least doesn't choose his side or tries to make an excuse to keep backing Chad. Can you ask your mom why she accepts Chad treating you like this? Let her know explicitly that it's hurtful that everyone seems to be okay with him treating you like this, even though it's ridiculous to have to explain. When I had a talk with her about all the stuff Chad did, she made it clear that she still loves Chad extremely, and that that's her son and grandbaby, and it's not going to change anything. Acting as if by me telling her what he did and how it hurt me was a cause to somehow make her choose which child to love or something. Even though it wasn't, and I made that clear. But clearly we see which one she chose. I also try to find out why she doesn't see the problem with how most of the family sees the whole thing, and I still can't get a clear answer as to why she's okay with it. Second update a month later. So it has been a hot minute since I last updated on the whole Chad situation. It's mainly due to the surprising fact that my family, my mother and sister, are not bugging me as much lately. The first day or two after the interaction with Chad was a bit hectic. Both of them are blowing up my phone, trying to get me to talk to them. Mostly my mom just making excuses for Chad, and my sister trying to basically just tell me to get over it. I ended up telling the both of them, in text and over the phone, and I would be cutting myself off completely from Chad and his little family. This sparked some anger, but my mother soon went quiet and later my sister. Everything seemed to be going pretty good after that for a while. That was until a week later when my sister showed up unannounced at my apartment demanding that I take the blessing of getting to be around Chad's sheltered child when no one else seemed to be able to. Basically acting like it was some huge honor that I was asked to babysit. I almost snapped. I wanted to call her a witch and to get off my property and not come back because I was just so sick of it. But I didn't. For my doorstep, I told her that if she wanted to see the baby so bad, just go over and see it. It wasn't my issue to deal with, then slammed the door in her face and watched her leave. It's been radio silent for a while now until earlier this week. I was scrolling on Instagram when I noticed that my oldest brother, the one that I get along super well and supported me about cutting Chad off, and his girlfriend of 4 years, the same age as me, are now engaged and posted pictures of the proposal. I noticed the post had been made last week, but no one had told me? Not even my mother? I texted my brother's girlfriend asking her about literally everything that was happening, and she was surprised because my mother had said she had told everyone in the family about the wedding. She then told me that they would be holding a family meeting at my parents' house to talk about the wedding plans, and I said okay. The meeting was for today around dinner time. I showed up and walked into the house and noticed that a lot of stuff was different decoration-wise. My parents had our family photos all arranged around the living room and a few random frames with multiple small photos in them as well. I noticed that they had replaced multiple small photos of specifically me from the frames and replaced them with now pictures of Chad and his wife, and my older brother and his girlfriend. What were maybe 6 pictures of me in any of the walls? There were 2 now, a baby picture of me and my senior high school photo that are now in the hallway, not even in the living room. I ignored it and didn't say anything. After a while, everyone showed up except for, of course, Chad, who my mom pulled the he wanted to spend time with his baby BS. They all started talking about the people plans of the party, aka people who were going to be key parts of the wedding cast. I tried my best to listen and take in all of what my brother's girlfriend was saying, and I noticed by the end of it all that my name was literally never added into any of the main plans. I wasn't mentioned at all. For another in the plans, that I started to question why I was there, if I wasn't going to be in the main plans of the wedding. I was kinda like, why not just send me an invitation then? I went home and texted his girlfriend asking about what had happened at a little meeting. Apparently, my mother had told her that I wouldn't want to be involved in any of the wedding stuff and that it wasn't my thing. She called me infeminine and that I wouldn't like doing any kind of bridal stuff because I'm not girly. She then said everything was set in stone now. My older sister is going to be a bridesmaid and my little sister is to be a flower girl. My little brother will be the ring holder and my other little brother and Chad will be groomsmen. And apparently my mother also told her that because of what happened with Chad, that I shouldn't be sat at a family table but at a guest table. I will just be another guest at the wedding. I didn't really say anything back because it hurt. It hurt that my mother would say that about me, that I was unfeminine, and that just because I myself didn't do a lot of girly things in my spare time, I wasn't going to be able or enjoy doing something like a wedding or be a bridesmaid. I can't believe she would say that about me. To be honest, I don't know if I'm even going to go. The wedding is scheduled for the end of the year. It sounds stupid and petty, but this hurt me. It hurt that I'm being outcasted, most likely due to Chad once again. As I'm typing this, my sister is texting me about how she's helping plan all the bride stuff. Honestly, I'm going to leave it off at this for right now, because I don't know how to even feel, if you know what I mean right now. What's your older brother's take on it? Does he know about you being excluded? We had a small talk about it, but he is in a hard spot now seeing as they have already finalized who they want on the wedding party. And I guess his fiancée had already talked to everyone who she wants on her bridal team. The one thing he said that he's going to try and get changed is the table seating, because he thinks that what my mom said about the whole Chad thing is stupid. He said that he will try and get me back at a family table just away from Chad and his family. Do you actually want to go to the wedding? It was the only other one I was actually wanting to go to. Not going to my older sister because of how mean she is to me, and she lets her boyfriend verbally bully me whenever he's near me. My little brother, who is 15, is being pressured into marrying his girlfriend once they turn of age, but not going to that. And the rest of my siblings are elementary school age. I guess I was just really excited because he's the only sibling that I actually get along with. Third update. I don't even know what to say. I didn't expect to update again so soon, but I just got the news from my older brother's fiancée. Chad's wife is pregnant again. Am I the a-hole for not attending the engagement dinner my future in-laws threw for me after my fiancé hid my engagement ring? My fiancé, male 31, proposed to me, female 28 days ago. He has this habit of joking around and pulling pranks from time to time. It bothers me sometimes, but I try to have patience. His family wanted to throw us an engagement party at a restaurant. I heard his mom talk about how expensive the place was and how much money they paid for reservations, so this clearly was a huge deal for them. My fiancé and I were getting ready. I noticed my engagement ring wasn't where I left it before I entered the shower. I freaked out and looked for it everywhere. I asked my fiancé about it and he said he didn't see it. I freaked out and was running out of time for the party. He sat there watching me, almost losing my mind trying to find it, to the point where I started crying because without a ring, I couldn't show up to the party. I kept thinking about what his family would say and how they'd think I was irresponsible to lose the ring that is somewhat expensive. I gave up looking and sat down and just cried in frustration. Next thing I knew, my fiancé was standing in front of me, laughing, with his hand extended to me with a ring in it. I asked where he found it, and he could barely speak and say that he hid it last minute before the party as a prank. I was in shock. He casually told me to get ready so we could get there in time. But I just sort of blew up on him and started yelling, saying he hid a ring. Made me freak out for 2 hours almost. It almost made me miss the party. He was like, "Relax. It was a prank, okay? Don't make a big deal out of it and ruin the evening." I told him I wasn't going to the party and that if his family asked, I would tell them it was because he hid my ring. He freaked out and started begging me to let it go and just go with him. But I refused and went into the bedroom, took my medication and stayed there. He lost it and kept saying that I blew this out of proportion and that I ruined my own party and cost his family money and disrespected them by not attending. His family found out and they were mad at him, but also me for choosing to not attend and getting over it. But I was in a horrible state emotionally and couldn't handle being in public place after what happened. Am I the a-hole for choosing to not go after he hid a ring? Now for the top comments. Not the a-hole. 2 hours? That's long past prank. Even 5 minutes is too long. 5 minutes with a prankster, you still think it could be him and didn't make it okay. Also, it stops being funny when you start crying. Yes, almost 2 hours of me, 1, freaking out. 2, running around turning the place upside down looking for it. And 3, worrying and freaking about not finding it and not making it to the party. That was viciously cruel on his part. Vile and abusive. I'm begging you, old woman to young woman, give that ring back and shut that sadistic bastard out of your life. Really, that was just horrifying to read. That will be the story of your whole life if you marry this twisted creep. Info? Why would you marry someone who thinks making you cry is funny? He said that I'm prone to crying, and that I get emotional and cry over every little thing, which isn't his fault. Basically calling me a drama queen. I do tend to overreact sometimes, but I genuinely was worried about losing the ring. His family would have given me hell, that's for sure. Not the a-hole. Please take a hard look and understand that his behavior is neither funny nor at all normal. It was a show for him controlling you and enjoying your reaction. This is not someone you marry. He did something awful to you and he really enjoyed watching you suffer. For 2 hours. Then he blamed you for overreacting. Sounds a bit dramatic, but I don't think it's safe for you to marry him. Next story. Am I the a-hole for leaving the restaurant when my fiancé told me to pay for his friend's meal just because he had cancer? So, my female 28 fiancé Jack, male 30, has a friend Steve, male 33, who had cancer but is now doing better. He's one of Jack's closest friends, and Jack was there with him all the way to the end of the treatment. Steve started going out and socializing again, which is great. However, whenever we go out, Jack will expect me to pay for Steve's meals or drinks, using the excuse of he had cancer. Show some empathy. We went to an electronics shop one time, and Jack told me to pay for Steve's purchases because he has had cancer. I sucked it up once and twice, but then told him I couldn't do it anymore. He emphasized on the fact that Steve had cancer and reminded me of how his financial status was affected, and so we should help from time to time. But funny how I'm always the one paying. Yesterday, Jack and I were at a restaurant for lunch. Steve somehow showed up and sat with us. We ate lunch and chattered, and before we left and I was about to pay the bill, Jack gestured for me to pay for Steve's meal too. I played dumb and said, "I'm sorry, but why should I pay for his meal?" Jack obviously didn't want to say because he had cancer and is struggling out loud and in front of Steve, so he asked me to step outside so we could talk. I refused and said that there was nothing to say, that Steve had cancer, which was unfortunate and all that, but that in no way makes him entitled to my money. Steve looked stunned. He glanced at Jack and Jack was fuming. He told me to just pay this time, but I only paid for our lunch, then got up and made my way out. I heard him repeatedly apologizing to Steve as I was walking out. Jack didn't come home, but left 4 nasty texts calling me unhinged, petty, selfish, and short-sighted, as well as unsympathetic to what his friend went and is going through. I texted back that his friend's unfortunate circumstances aren't my responsibility, nor are they my fault. He said I'd lose nothing if I just paid for his lunch, and that walking out on him was nasty beyond comprehension. I told him he could have paid for him if he felt so strongly about it. He responded by saying I was being willingly ignorant, since I know he's out of job as of now, and said that a small act of kindness could have gotten me a long way. But I made it about myself, my money, and jeopardized his friendship for no reason. He's still mad, saying he won't speak to me till I make it up to him and Steve. Am I the a-hole for walking out and refusing to pay? Not the a-hole. Dump this guy and let him date Steve. I don't know what to say honestly. You could tell your fiancé to get a job and pay for his friend's electronics and restaurant meals if he really, truly felt bad about a guy's cancer. He's a leech. You're not married yet, so he's still on his best behavior. It'll only get worse if you go through with marrying him. He's testing the waters, isn't he? Getting her used to taking orders on what to pay for, getting nasty to put her off complaining. And pleasant. Not the a-hole. And are you sure he isn't inviting his friend out on your dime with the premise he told his friend you were treating? Really feels like Jack and Steve are dating, and Opie is just financing the dates. Like, why else would Jack expect Opie to pay for everything? He's choosing to invite his friend. Why are they buying electronics in a group? Why are you paying and not your boyfriend? Not the a-hole, and I would end this relationship. Like I said, he promised to pay everything back once he starts working. He even carries a small notebook to write down that stuff I paid for and how much I paid. Now, I didn't pressure him to pay me back, but he's insisting, saying that he can't bring himself to let me, a woman, pay for his needs. I call BS. Stop paying for Jack too. You are being used. Yep, Opie is being played and can't see it. Not a-hole Opie, but you will be if you keep enabling your boyfriend and Steve. Next story. Am I the a-hole for telling my wife I'll purchase the coffee I want because I'm the one with a job? I've lately come to enjoy some nicer coffee than I usually drank. I brew it at home, so we're not talking daily $7 drinks or anything. Instead of getting a giant bulk bag of Kirkland coffee, I've come to enjoy a $12 bag from the grocery store. It lasts a bit over a week, maybe 2, instead of $15 for about 5 weeks. My wife doesn't work while I work from home. She also unfortunately isn't doing a lot around the house right now because of a medical condition. I've been picking up most of the slack while she sits around. This has been going on for 6 months for the household, years for the job. Yes, she has depression, and yes, she's getting treatment for it. I try my best to do what I can, but oftentimes I have to ask her multiple times to help with even simple tasks to share responsibility. We've had discussions on how I know she's working on the issue, but I can't do everything on my own. I make plenty to be able to have my coffee be a splurge. She'd previously commented on a cost, and I said, it's well within the budget, and I like it. It's fine. I'd shown her the grocery budget in a budgeting app, which is nearly always under budget every month for the past few years. I brought home another bag the other day, and she made a comment along the lines of, "You're spending way too much on this fancy coffee. You need to go back to the other stuff." Having had to make the grocery run again, after doing other household chores that morning, I snapped. The one with a job gets to make the grocery choices. Work again or contribute to the household and you can have a say in what we buy. She called me a cold-hearted a-hole and stormed out of the room. So am I the a-hole for my reaction to being called out on coffee buying? Now for the top comments. Not the a-hole. Not at all. This has absolutely nothing to do with coffee. I suffer from severe depression and anxiety. The more I sit and do nothing, the worse it gets. All the treatments in the world are totally useless if I don't follow through with my actions. Time for her to find another therapist and develop a real plan for getting back to participating in life. Thank you for your insight. She's actually putting off therapist appointments for a while. I should encourage her to make one and check in on that. Maybe even just gently prodding her into going for evening walks again like we used to. I really, really want her to be well and enjoying life. I know my post comes off as grouchy, and I did apologize for what I said to her. I love her like crazy. This post is just a snapshot of our lives. It's not everything by any means. Coffee's not your problem, but you know this, right? Yeah, it's not about a coffee. It's about her trying to make Opie as miserable as she is, by removing anything that brings him any happiness no matter how small. That behavior is toxic. Not the a-hole, but I do feel there may be more than the coffee issue going on for the response you gave. Definitely better ways to talk about it than the response provided. I admit, I'm growing resentful for having to be responsible for income, laundry, shopping, cleaning, and most cooking. Even doing grocery pickup, where I order online and all you have to do is call the store when you drive up, is too much sometimes for her. I have to ask or remind her multiple times to do shared chores, which half the time I end up doing anyway. You're human, OB. Every one of us snaps every once in a while, and it sounds like you've been filling her cup in terms of compassionate care and you're not getting it back because she's struggling with depression. I'm not advocating meanness, but sometimes for our own sakes, we need to draw a hard line and unfortunately speak harsh truths so our partners understand us. You should definitely have a talk with your wife so she understands that coffee equals joy, and by questioning or denying you that one small pleasure after how hard you're sacrificing to keep you two afloat, you snapped. Apologize for the words you used, but if you're really at your wit's end in terms of resentment, don't apologize for the sentiment. Last story. Am I the a-hole for calling my fiancé selfish for refusing to let my dad walk me down the aisle? My fiancé, 26 male, and I, 23 female, have been together for over 2 years. I don't have a big family, just my dad and my older sister. My dad has always been a single parent, devoting his life for me and my sister, and working over 14 plus jobs in the past 6 years to provide for us. I love my dad, and we have the best relationship anyone could hope for. However, my fiancé does not get along with him. They have different opinions on so many things. For example, my fiancé one time suggested to my dad to sell the truck he has because it's been sitting there for years. My dad got offended because it is my grandfather's truck, and he has no money to get it fixed. Another example, my fiancé got mad at my dad at a party for talking about his struggle after my mom's death and accused him of collecting sympathy points, but dad said that he always talks about it casually. The recent disagreement was when my dad refused to give my fiancé money to contribute to the wedding. My fiancé complained, but I said that my dad isn't obligated to pay for the wedding. Yesterday, my fiancé told me to look for someone else to walk me down the aisle, and I asked why. He said that my dad refused to help with the wedding and he should be grateful he's still invited. I got upset and argued that for one, my dad refused to contribute because he has no money. He cannot afford to pay. And two, just like any bride, I want my dad to walk me down the aisle on my wedding day. He threw a fit, saying that I was trying to ruin his mood and get him upset on our wedding day. But I called him selfish for wanting to take away the moment I always dreamed of. Sounds cliche, but I'm like that. Over his disagreements with dad. It's not fair, given that me and my dad are on great terms. He yelled at me for calling him selfish, although it's our wedding, not just mine. And I said that I clearly don't give a hoot if he's uncomfortable, and then walked out. He's fuming and insisting I'm being inconsiderate and projecting on him when I called him selfish. Red flags. Your fiancé is trying to control you. He sees your father as a threat to his control over you. There is no rational reason as to why he is taking issue with the issues he has been having a go at you over. I have been where you are. Please, OP, look up the term coercive control. I wish I had realized this concept sooner. Not the a-hole. I don't know. I thought that these disagreements were minor and they will at some points move past them. But it turns out I was wrong. He says it's his wedding too, which is true, but I really can't do this to my dad. I want him to be there with me and not just as a guest. He criticized your dad for how he handled grief. This does not sound like a man who knows how to love. Please reconsider this wedding. It was heartbreaking to read that OP's fiancé accused dad of collecting sympathy points when openly expressing grief. Grief is hard on anyone, but we also know that most men are not taught to express their emotions and vulnerabilities openly or sharing challenging experiences like losing a partner. The fact that OP's dad has got into a place where he can talk about it casually and does so is huge, and fiancé's response was so toxic and problematic. OP nods the a-hole. Run. Don't marry this dude. Your life is yours, but you're also young. Even if you're keen on having kids soon, you have plenty of time. Best of luck to you. Why are you marrying this guy? Sell your truck or you're not my friend. You're grieving too much. Too publicly. And then the gall to publicly shame your dad for not grieving to his standards. You will be paying for my wedding. If he wants this to determine his relationships, that's his call. But to ask that you limit your relationships to the people he approves, that's awfully controlling and self-centered. I doubt that your dad is the only person that brings out the self-centered idiot in him. It sounds like you've dismissed an awful lot of his behavior. But if you are going to make the mistake of marrying this jerk, not the a-hole for having your father walk you down the aisle. Wow, not married yet, and he's already trying to isolate OP from her family. All of his issues with the dad are just ridiculous. OP ditched the fiancé, not your dad. He is going to escalate this controlling behavior if you get married to him. This is not a red flag. This is a bright flashing neon sign saying, run away.